Republican Governor Paul LePage of Maine is back in the news just a day after saying that 90% plus of all of the drug dealers arrested in his state are either black or Hispanic and either from the Bronx, Brooklyn, or Waterbury, Connecticut. I've been through Waterbury. It didn't seem that big of a hive of crime and villainy, but apparently it is. People have a problem with that, not specifically the Waterbury part, really more of the racial part, and including some politicians in Maine. And in response to that, Paul LePage then left this voicemail on Representative Drew Gattin, a Democrat's message box.
Mr. Gattin, this is Governor Paul Richard LePage. I would like to talk to you about your comments about my being a racist, you cocksucker. And I want to talk to you. I want you to prove that I'm a racist. I've spent my life helping black people, and you little son of a bitch, socialist cocksucker, I need you to, I want you to record this and make it public because I am after you. Thank you.
That was polite at the end. Yeah. I was like, oh, I think I went too far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to do a partial defense of him before we rip him apart. So we've discussed he said it. We're discussing. We're going to be adults, and we're going to say the word. Okay. We've discussed the word cocksucker before, right? Mm-hmm. Jimmy, I know you think it's a bit of a high compliment.
Oh, sure. That's like the nicest thing you could do for somebody. You know, that's nicer than helping someone move. That should be like that should be a term of endearment. This is my wife and cocksucker Mary. Oh, she's the best. I love her.
I think that is not necessary.
The way he was using it? No, I don't think that was the way he was
using it.
No,
I don't think he was using it as a compliment. That's fair, John, right? Mm-hmm. And he was using it towards a male, which then, of course, puts a different tinge on it, right? And by the way, it's a terrible insult. Yeah. Don't use it towards females either.
Yeah.
Okay?
I would, if I had to guess, I would say it's probably 80% of the time used towards males.
Uh-huh.
Because they want to get in the homophobic angle. And we'll get into that in his defense. But I think that's the intent, is it's not, oh, you're disgusting. It's, oh, you're below me. You're a deviant. I think that's been the goal the whole time. You think
so? I think it's just, that is, it's a word that people have used forever, especially a guy LePage's age. And maybe partly they used it forever because there was homophobia forever, right? Mm-hmm. So that certainly could be a big part of it. To me, the racist stuff is much more important than him being so vituperative against this particular guy. And the other part that I'll defend is I like that he's like, I want you to record this because I'm coming for you. It sounds like the kind of thing, honestly, I might say.
Come and see.
Okay, let's get to his defense, and then I want to hear what you guys think about the whole scenario.
Okay, so when asked about this, he said, I called Gattin and used the worst word I could think of, which is, again, telling if he thinks that is the worst possible thing you could be. I apologize for that to the people of Maine, but I make no apology for trying to end the drug epidemic that is ravaging our state. Legislators like Gattin would rather be politically correct and protect ruthless drug dealers than work with me to stop this crisis that is killing 5 Mainers a week. So this is a message that we've seen from Donald Trump too. The idea that when they say something horrendous and offensive, there isn't time to not say something disgusting and repulsive. It's like, come on, we got so much to do. I can't not call you a racial slur or something like that. I don't think that it's one or the other. You either help out the people of your state or you call people cocksuckers.
Well, so, and the ironic part of that, and the thing that I'm again more angry at him for, is that he actually had time to issue veto threats for bills that actually would have helped people afflicted with drugs. That would have not only increased, by the way, penalties against drug dealers, etc., but it would have also helped clinics. And he's like, well, if you're going to do drug clinics that actually help people who are addicted, no, I'm threatening to veto that. I can't have that because I'm too busy calling people cocksuckers, right? So, no, if you were actually addressing the problem, well, that's a whole different scenario, but you're actually blocking some of the solutions to the problem while just yelling at people and doing it for what appears to be political advantage. Like, oh, I'm going to be tough and you're going to see. I'm not going to actually do anything because I'm a Republican. I don't believe in the government. All I believe in is, punishing crime and criminals. I'll turn everything into criminal and punish them, right? Especially if they're minorities. And I don't say that lightly. In this case, that's what Paul LePage is about.
Yeah, so this is something that we covered months and months ago on the show. It's the first thing that he became famous for on the Young Turks Network. So here are comments that he originally made about black drug dealers earlier this year.
People that take drugs. These are guys that are named D-Money, Smoothie, Shifty, these type of guys that come from Connecticut, New York. They come up here, they sell their heroin, then they go back home. Incidentally, half the time they impregnate a young white girl before they leave, which is a real sad thing, because then we have another issue that we got to deal with down the road.
Yeah, he did have another issue that he had to deal with because of the comments that he made. And so, just in case you don't think that this is proof of the racism, he eventually apologized, which is in this clip.
No way.
It wasn't intended to be race. It was intended to be Maine. Maine, I am very passionate about Maine. It was all about Maine. And I apologize again. My brain was slower than my mouth.
That's the most honest thing ever.
Okay, well, that last part is, I guess, true. All right, to me, that's indicative. It's not like, so when he says, they come in here and impregnate the white girls, we're pretty much done here, right? So you get a sense of what Paul LePage is about. Now, it doesn't, like, he says with such fury that he is not a racist. That's what that whole cocksucker voice message was about. How dare you call me racist? Now, hold, like, he does have an interesting point. He has raised a Jamaican kid for a long time, since I think he was 12, okay? So, and he says he's his son. I don't know if he technically adopted him, but that's okay. He raised him for a long, long time. So that's a super interesting caveat to Paul LePage. But that doesn't mean, no, but hold on now. That doesn't mean that you don't have preconceived notions about race. Like, so you've done a wonderful thing in raising a kid, bless your heart, right? But that doesn't mean it wiped away everything that was in your head. Because in that moment where your mouth was working faster than your brain, you thought, damn it, these drug dealers are impregnating the white girls. You thought that, you said that, and that's in your head. So we can have a debate about whether he's a racist, although I'm not sure it's much of a debate, right? But that notion that's in his head is racist.
Yeah.
Right? That's the definition of racism, right?
White guys don't sell drugs, and they also don't impregnate white women.
Okay.
We have been busy. We've been busy with both. You know, the first thing is, I've yet to hear someone say, I am not a racist, who isn't. You know what I mean? Like, that's the first clue. As soon as I hear, I am not a racist, like, yes, you are. But you look at this guy, like the cocksucker thing, and it is, like you said, it's an old school white guy insult. But yeah, it's the homophobic part. Like, that's what they think. This is the worst thing you could be as a male, is to be a cocksucker. And then the whole thing with D-Money and Shifty and, impregnating white girls. Like, first of all, I didn't know it was that easy, or I'd have been going to Maine earlier. Like, I didn't know you just had to show up and, yo, man, D-Money in the house and just knock one off. I didn't know it was. But it all goes back to the old school stereotypical image of a drug dealer. Right now, the drug problem in places like Maine, it's a heroin problem, it's a pill problem. This is a white problem, and a lot of it is a white middle class problem. And he's sitting up there looking for black drug dealers. If you're a black drug dealer, if you say you are that stereotypical corner drug dealer from the Bronx, do you know how quick you'd be arrested in Maine? Like, the minute you rolled up in Maine in your Cadillac with your wheels on it and stepped out in your hoodie, they'd be like, excuse me, D-Money, yeah, we need to talk to you. You know, they're getting their drugs from their doctors. And then once their doctors stop prescribing Oxy, they're getting heroin from street dealers or from dealers who, go to the PTA meeting. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like you said, the problem with drugs, if you really want to fight the problem, is in treatment. In treatment and recovery. And they don't want to put any money into this. He wants to arrest every black person he sees in Maine.
Yeah. So that's such an important point, because in another racially charged statement, Paul LePage said 90% of the people who are drug dealers in Maine are black or Latino. And when challenged on it, he said, I have their pictures on my desk, the people, the drug dealers who've been arrested in Maine. That's because, as Alonzo points out, the minute a black guy walks into Maine, with whatever stereotypical car he has, etc.
Right.
They're on him like immediately. But there might be plenty of white
Well, and
drug
also-
dealers in Maine who they don't notice because they mix in with the other Mainers who are 95% white, according to Paul LePage.
And he's focusing on drug dealing of illegal drugs. He doesn't care as much about the drugs that are given by people who are able to write on pads and legally prescribe them, even though those are the ones that lead to far more deaths. So, as Lonzo pointed out, a lot of them are doctors and also reps for pharmaceutical companies. They're the ones putting all the incentives on doctors to prescribe drugs that are far more powerful and addictive than they need to be. We covered studies recently showing that in some cases, marijuana can be used to treat the same pain symptoms, but without the needless addiction and rates of suicide and death and all that, overdose. But also,
Can I just say, because you guys are making the most important point there. So in the midst of all the insults and the, and all this stuff, don't lose track of why we have the problem that we have. It's not because a couple of out-of-state drug dealers came in to meet the demand in Maine for drugs, and it doesn't matter what their race is. The problem is the demand. And yes, the people who are demanding the drugs happen to be white in Maine, but that's of course not the issue either. The question is, how did that demand arise?
Yeah.
And as we've covered on the show, and as Alonzo and John just pointed out, they started as painkillers, OxyContin. This is happening all across the country.
Yeah.
And it's happening to white people, it's happening to black people, it's happening to everybody. And actually, when it was happening, when drugs were more of an issue that people thought afflicted African Americans in the cities, etc., well, there's a little less of a priority. Now, all of a sudden, this heroin thing is an epidemic because it's affecting white people across the country. They're like, wait a minute, we got to do something about this. Okay, we got to do something, right? And so if you want to do something, if Paul LePage was genuine and you didn't care and you thought he was a real guy for insulting people and thinking like you do and you got past all of that stuff, well, the problem is he isn't doing anything about the thing that's causing the demand, because then he would have to challenge Republican donors, like the drug companies. And by the way, they're Democratic donors too. Okay, those drug companies are the #1 donors in the country, more than the oil companies, more than the banks, because they got to push.
Hillary Clinton,
I mean, you
Howard
want to talk about drug dealers? They are literally drug dealers, but they do it on a mass scale to the tune of billions of dollars. It's not to say that no one should ever receive a prescription for OxyContin, but we should be super careful about that because it is what is driving this heroin epidemic. So, but instead of doing something about that real problem, Paul LePage says, I got it. Let's blame black people, call it D-Money and Shifty and all this other stuff, and say, oh my God, on top of that, they screwed our white women.
Yeah.
Now, do you think he's really addressing the real problem?
So 2 points. So the people in Maine have the demand for the heroin, but they can't get it themselves because they're white. Right? So how are they supposed to get it? Maybe they should import some black people to live there. My other point was that is this because of the OxyContin? That's like a new drug from the last 15. When did that get invented? Because Vicodin's, I don't understand why is all of a sudden we're having this?
It's because it's more powerful.
Yeah,
because
oxycodone,
the thing
right?
about taking drugs is you get hooked on one drug and then you need something more powerful. So if you're in the Vicodin world, then oxy is more powerful, and heroin is cheaper. It's cheaper to buy heroin on the street than to get your OxyContin pills. Now, the thing about Governor LePage, though, see, I disagree with you. I don't think the problem here has anything to do with drugs. Or this is straight out racist. This guy, like, he wants no black people in Maine. That's his thing. I
think he just achieved it too.
the 5 of them left. They went to Vermont. But
Watch
his
the
whole
drug use go up in Vermont.
his whole thing, his anger is not pointed toward the drugs. It's pointed toward black people. The whole D-Money, Shifty, impregnate white women, because historically, and I mean this goes back to the beginnings of slavery, the biggest fear of white men is black men attacking their women.
Well,
right?
we know how you
that
work.
is what
First you
that is
take our
what,
jobs, and then you take our
lynching
women. I know how it works.
and everything else. It all goes back to when it was illegal for a black man to even look at a white woman. Yeah. So when you talk about the Republican Party and the way they prey on fear, because they love that this is the greatest fear to have, that this black guy, besides coming up here is now impregnating your daughter. You know, it'd be different if they had like a basketball powerhouse school and he was coming up to play ball. Then you're allowed to have white women, by the way, Jimmy. So it is accepted. Jimmy's nervous. I want you to know it is accepted on a sports basis. But yeah, this guy, it has nothing to do with drugs. I don't think drugs are the issue here. I don't think protecting Maine is the issue, other than his thing of, I want to protect Maine. I'm telling white people that I want to protect Maine from black people and Latino people.
Yeah,
That's his code.
We talk about projection a lot on this show. The origins of that fear that you need to protect the scarcest resource in your race is your women, and that you need to protect them, is probably just protection based on several hundred years of systematic rape of female slaves.
So a lot
If
of
they do that across the country for a couple of hundred years, then you fear, oh shit, if they're free now, they're going to do the same thing back to us.
Right. So look, this is the point where the conservatives' heads will explode. But there's a lot of projection that goes on there, and sometimes some of the conservative talk shows have literally said this, like, oh, what if they do, you know? They haven't said, what if they do to us what we've been doing to them? Because that would be far too honest. But that's exactly what they've intimated. So in their mind, like, hey, we're used to getting favors, right? We own this world. So I get to give my son the job that I had, and I don't want him competing with blacks or Latinos or anyone else. I just give him that job, right? And I have my spot in the country club, and I have it. That's mine. I don't want to share it with anybody else. I'm used to getting all the favors. So if minorities get in charge, they will want the same favors that I've been used to getting my whole life. Yeah. Now, again, this is a pretty old school. If you're a young white guy in the middle of Nebraska, you ain't getting no favors. I know that. Okay,
is this how you bring up Luke Russert again? Is that what this is?
Okay, all right, listen. And then to John's point, and this is, it's controversial, but it's true. So, and again, it isn't about a young white guy in the middle of the country today. I know you didn't do it. We all know you didn't do it, okay? But about culture and how it affects people like Paul LePage, who's a little bit older and is used to being in charge, right? So, for centuries in this country, in the South, the white masters got to rape their slaves. And so that is so uncomfortable that we don't talk about it in our history classes nearly to the level that we should. You know human nature. They mention it in passing. You think it happened in passing? When one person has absolute power over another person, owns that person, what do you think guys do? Now, you don't have to, it's not a matter of conjecture. We know what happened, right? So then the thought is, well, if we did that, well, I guess they would do it too, given the opportunity. So we have to make sure that we do not give them the opportunity, okay? So that's how it started. And then that becomes a part of the culture that gets passed down, unfortunately. Now, the good news is I think it's getting passed down less and less and less every generation. But there are vestiges of that are left, and you see it in someone like LePage's comments.
Yeah. Well, why don't we see? Well, I have another instance of one of those vestiges in social media. If you want to turn to that.
Just really quick about the drug thing too. It all starts with the criminalization of addiction, right? So we're still doing that. Our friend Josh Mankiewicz did a great report. I forget the northeastern state, but it was about a police chief there who decided to stop arresting people for drugs instead. They're not doing that anymore, and they're getting them treatment. And they're talking about, it was a whole thing about all the success they're having with it. And these people who would be in jail now come back to thank him for saving their lives because they got clean. So I just think that's a bigger thing. We need to stop criminalizing addiction. For some reason, we all want to say, okay, now marijuana's okay. We don't want to put you in jail for that. But if you do heroin, we want to put you in jail. I just saw Debbie Wasserman Shields say that in her debate with Tim Canova. It's just like, why is one addiction, why is alcoholism okay, but heroin addiction, you're a bad person? That doesn't make sense.
Well, it's another debate, but it's the business of prisons. Prisons are big business, private prisons, prison labor being used to build and make things. And Cenk, you mentioned the Midwest, the white guy in the Midwest. They have a completely different drug problem. They have a meth problem.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because I forget what state it was, but they examined a white community with meth, and it was the same breakdown as a black community with crack in the 80s, where it started out on the street. Then it expanded. Suddenly people were losing their jobs because they were just meth heads, and the crime went up. And in other words, it's their drug. That's like the white rural drug. I mean, it's everywhere, but it's the same thing. But yeah, the business isn't treatment. The money isn't in treatment. The money's in prison. You know, the money's in locking them away and building these prison industrial complexes.
But you know what? I think we're going to win on that issue. In fact, we're in the middle of winning. And so let me explain why. This is also very, very important. Look, in the past, the idea was you criminalize this because we've got it backwards. It wasn't they were so concerned about the drug problem, hence they decided to criminalize it. It was they decided to criminalize some minorities and then figured out, oh, we can do it through drugs. And that's, again, you can just watch documentaries on it, read up on the history of it. We originally started calling pot marijuana to blame Mexican immigrants because we were trying to figure out a way to get them. And
they used to call it hemp or cannabis, and they used to be grown all the time.
Right.
That's right.
And so the opium we made illegal. It used to be legal. We made it illegal to get the Chinese immigrants.
That's right.
And so, and then crack, we made much worse penalties for it to get imprison more blacks, immigrants in a sense, right? And so now, the reason I think we're going to win and get rid of some of those private prisons and decriminalize this is because finally it's affecting white people on a scale where white legislators then turn around and go, oh, no, wait a minute. I don't want to put my people in jail. Well, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So that's why some of the people who are leading the charge are now Republicans. Not LePage, he's in the old days, like Rand Paul in Kentucky. In Kentucky, they got a giant drug problem, and it's mainly white people. So all of a sudden, one of the most conservative guys in the Senate's like, maybe we shouldn't put people in prison for drugs anymore. Oh, I wonder why. Now, look, I give him all the credit in the world anyway because he's headed in the right direction. I don't care why he does it, etc. Let's just decriminalize because it's so stupid, and I'll take any allies I can get. So don't get me wrong on that. But understand the underlying things that are happening on this issue. And that's why, and I'll predict it for you right now, and you'll see it. We will begin to decriminalize drugs on a mass scale because it is affecting white people on a mass scale. And so, and by the way, just one last thing. It's not like white folks don't get in a room and make decisions like 10 people at Davos or wherever.
It's a couple of times bigger than that.
Yeah.
I'll let you know the next time we.
Right. There's no cabal and stuff. It's a lot of people's subconscious, reactions to social phenomenon, etc. And it's natural reactions like, but wait a minute, I see that affected my cousin. And I know my cousin's not a bad guy. I know he's not a criminal.
It becomes real to them.
That's right. Yeah. And when it becomes real to them and they go, well, Bob shouldn't be sitting in jail. That's so stupid. He's got an addiction problem like Joe does. It's just Joe's with alcohol and Bob's with, because he got started on OxyContin because of his back pain. What the hell are we putting that guy in jail for? Right? And so then they go, oh, I see. Especially with the Republicans, they never know something is a problem until it happens to them.
They need direct. And the evidence has to be direct and close, familial, and pounded into their face.
Right. And then finally,
even then, 30% resist it.
So that's why, so the unfortunate part that the drug problem has grown so large that it's affecting almost, every community in the country.
Yeah.
The fortunate part of that is that at least it'll lead to decriminalization.
Exactly. Then I can
promise we're moving on. But that's the reason why I'm not giving Rand Paul any credit, because they find the next thing to criminalize. It keeps progressing. It was illegal, as you point out, to look at white women. They find the next thing that they're better than the minorities for anyway. They'll find something else criminalized. We need to find a way to make sure that they equalize their view of people. Like the vision that someone is lower than you, they'll find a way to continue to keep them lower than you. So because they're decriminalized or made decriminalized now because now white folks are affected, they'll find the next thing to say, oh, but you're not as good as us on this thing. They need to keep the system. So we change that and you're okay.
No, I hear you, Jared, but their other problem in that regard is that they're starting to become the minority. So maybe they could keep doing that in Maine, and maybe that's why LePage has gotten elected a couple of times. But you can't do that in California where whites are the minority. You can't do that in many places in the country. And that is part of what is leading to this explosion of the angry white man that we're seeing in the form of Trump and his supporters. Like they see that power slipping away from them. They're like, no, come back.
Well, another thing you said is true. That young white guy or white woman has black friends now. And they have Latino friends. So you can't tell them the same lies that you used to. Because now they're like, Well, no, I go to school with a guy, and he's not what you said, or I know this woman, and she's not. So now everything their parents told them, more and more, is being proven to be a lie. So, you know, hopefully we're on the right way. But what you said is exactly right. They will try to find another way to make it different. And the thing with the black male, and this has gone on throughout history, it's the hyper everything about the black male, right? So the cop had to shoot the black male because he has superhuman strength. He's stronger than anybody. And the black male has to be stopped because his sexuality is so much more powerful. That's why you have to protect the white woman and all that. I mean, this has been historically, that's what they put on us, that black males are somehow, you know, and so the weirdest thing, right? Because it's like they're lesser than us, but they're superior in strength, superior in sexuality, superior in athletic ability, but they're lesser than us. You know, it's the craziest argument.
They always try to tie it to animalistic characteristics.
Right.
I mean, I'm not as fast as a tiger, but I consider myself better than a tiger.
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing. Actually, during, I believe it was around the time of Michael Brown, we covered a lot of historical newspaper posts about the attacks of black men, and they described them as gigantic, simian, all that stuff.
How about we decriminalize drugs, but we criminalize wearing your pants too low? How about that? Is that okay?
Well, Bill Cosby would have agreed.
That's true.
No,
And a
I
lot of areas
say
have
that if you are a black cocksucker named Shifty or D Money, you should stay out of Maine.
Yeah.